In this video, we're covering 3D modeling using reference images. So we've created our references in Photoshop. First thing I'm going to do is look at setting up a project in Maya. So I'm going to click on my File Explorer here, looking at my external drive or memory pen, and I've got a folder called Maya Tutorials. You can have a folder called Maya Projects. I'm going to right click here, go to New Folder, and I'm just going to call that folder Fantasy Diorama Project. So whatever your current project name is in there. Now this isn't currently linked to my Maya project, it's just an empty folder, so to do that I'll have to hop into Maya, go to File, and then Project Window. Under your current project there, you'll want to hit New rather than Default. You see it has a default location in here, so what we want to do is change that. And we're going to change it to the folder that we just made. Hit Select there, and then I'm going to call this Diorama _ project. Great, and then if I accept, that should have set the folder that I created as a root project folder for this project. To check that, just go back into where you created your folder, double click, and you should see your diorama project, or whatever you called your project, in there, along with all of the assets and things that are inside the Maya scene. Now in Maya, if your window layout doesn't look like what I have in front of me, you maybe have it set to a different workspace. In the top right hand corner here, you'll see some different options. I'm just using Maya Classic. If you select Maya Classic, it will reset your workspace to what I have in front of me here. Now just as I start to model, I want to make sure that my work is saving automatically. You can see it's trying to autosave from this little red error box that's popped up here, and it's not autosaving to the right location. To set up autosaves, we need to go to Windows, and then Settings and Preferences, and then Preferences. That's Windows, Settings, Preferences, and then Preferences, and you'll see a lot of options in here that will be handy for us to change. Down the left hand bar, the option that I'm interested in here is File/Project, and here you'll see you can enable autosave. So you want to tag Enable on, then you want to choose a destination for it to save in. I'm just selecting the autosave folder in my diorama project, and I'm going to hit Open, and there we go, we set that there. Here you can change the amount of autosaves, so the number of autosaves before it begins overwriting the autosaves. I'm going to set mine just down to 3, and the interval in minutes, I'm going to set mine up to 15. So every 15 minutes it'll ask me to save. If your computer is less reliable, you may want to set the interval right down to 5 or 10 minutes. Now in this File/Projects window, there's another option when you're working in college, or if you're working at home and you find issues with saving. If you press Ctrl+S to save and you find you're having errors or Maya's crashing, switch here File Dialog to OS Native. That will use the current operating system's native file browser rather than Maya's when saving and performing actions with folders. Okay, so tick on Operating System Native. I'm going to leave mine to Maya Default, but in college certainly Operating System Native will help you, and it may help you at home as well. Okay, so now that those settings are done, I can hit Save. Just before I do that though, I'll show you one more option in the Undo tab here. You see you can change your undos to infinite, which means you can go back as far as your computer's memory will allow you to. It will store your undo states in a folder, and it will allow you to undo right back to the start of your project. If you're short on space, you may want to turn that to finite and then set a certain amount of undos that you're able to perform with Control and Z. So once I've got all of that set up in Files and Projects, I'm going to hit Save. Now it's time to import our reference images into Maya to use as reference for 3D modeling against. So jumping back into Photoshop where our references are, you'll see I have everything labeled and in folders. So I have my original sketch and moodboard references, I have the thumbnails that I drew and then put together into the diorama sketch. I have the base top view and front view with some idea of the measurements. I also have a claw turnaround for the gargoyle claw, I have a pillar, and I also have a well, and I have all the views that I need in that, and the one that I'm going to choose to model up is the pillar. Now my measurements are in meters here, and whenever I go into Unity, whenever I bring models into Unity, I'll want them also to be in meters. The issue is Maya is set by default in centimeters, so we'll need to change that before we import anything. So quickly back in Maya, again we're going to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and Preferences. And because I'm working in meters, I want to go to settings on the left, and in linear units I'm going to change that from centimeters to meters, and you see that's changed my grid. And then I'm going to hit save, and what that means is each one of these units will be 1 meter, and it will also equal 1 unit in Unity. Press spacebar to access this view. That's the 4 windows view, and if you hover over any one of them and press spacebar, you will enter that view. You can also use the panels on the left hand side to switch between these views. So spacebar will bring you into the multiple view. So we have our perspective view, we have a front, a top, and a side view. If you want to reset these views, again, just use this little button on the left hand side. So perspectives in the top right, and then you have top, front, and side. So I'm going to save out my reference from Photoshop here. First, I'm going to crop down the image by pressing C, or using the crop tool on the left here, and then cropping in the edges, just so it's a little neater. There we are. Then I'm going to go to File, and I could go to Save As and choose a PNG, but just for expediency I'm going to go to Export and Quick Export as PNG. I'm going to find my project folder, go into Images, and save it here, calling it Pillar Turnaround, or Pillar Reference. And then hit Save, and that's that saved out. Now just remember, you've cropped the image and you may be cropping off other elements from your screen, so just be sure to undo if you have cropped, so that you don't save out the document with cropped off details. And I'm going to save that document again and jump back into Maya. Now to add our reference images in. We don't want to add them in perspective view. What you'll find is you'll have an image stuck to your perspective view no matter which way you look. Instead, we want our references in the front, side, and top windows. So I go to View and Image Plane, and then Import Image. Here you can find your image if it's saved in a different folder. Handily, mine's in my current project under the Images tab, and I can just choose that and press Open. And you'll see that will pop up in your window here. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for the side view and the top view. Now, as you'll see when I middle mouse scroll back out, this is a very small reference. I want this to be 4 meters high, and I'm a few centimeters on these meter long rulers. So I want to scale all of these references at the same time so they stay the same relative size. To do that, I'm going to left click and drag around all of them and use this little central cube to scale them all up at the same time until I get what is roughly 4 meters for the height of this pillar. So I can use my move tool W here to help me move these references up, again with them all selected for now, more so for whenever I'm scaling. So I'm going to move the front view so that it's sitting on the ground and it's in the center here, and this is 1, 2 and a bit meters high. Now I can set the midpoint to here, and that will allow me to scale from this area. To do that, I'm going to press D, and then I'm going to move this midpoint over to here. I can snap that as well by holding X before I grab the little target, and it will snap it on there. So again, that's D to select your midpoint, and then if you press X before you grab this, you can snap it onto your grid. Now when I use my scale tool R, you'll see it scales up from that point, which means that'll stay on the ground, and I can go 1, 2, 3, 4 meters up, and that's looking pretty good there. Okay, and again, the measurements are fairly rough, so it doesn't need to be exact, unless of course you're developing something that would need exact measurements if it was a part for manufacturing, for instance. So far we have our front view centered on our front camera here. We don't have the side view aligned with the side camera, and we don't have the top view aligned with the top camera. Now I'm going to look first to the perspective view, and you can see that this just looks like a jumbled mess at the moment. So what I want to do first of all is move the front view backwards, and that will give me space to model in the center at 0, 0 on the coordinates here at the center of my grid. Okay, it doesn't matter how far I move this back, it's an orthographic camera in the front view, it won't disappear into the distance. Same with the side view. I'm going to move this backwards on the x-axis, and what that will do is you'll see the grid will pop through here, and it will allow me to model against the grid. And again, it doesn't matter how far back I push this, it's not going to disappear into the distance in this orthographic view. Similarly, from the top view here, I'm going to get it and I'm going to push it down on the y-axis until I can see the grid on top of it, because I want to be modeling in this grid space here at 0, 0 on the coordinates. So you can see I've got 0, 0 lined up with the post in the front view, which I did just earlier there. I'm now going to set the midpoints of the other views and move them so that they are also centered. So let's look at the side view first of all. If I press D to select my midpoint, I can move that across right into the center of the side view base, which is where I want to start modeling from. Then I can use W to select my move tool. I'm going to make sure I've only got this view selected and not the other image planes, and I'm going to move this on the Z axis here so that that sits in the center. I can snap that again by holding X, grabbing that little vertice there, or grabbing this handle and pulling and pointing it towards this grid, and it will snap to our grid coordinate. That's holding X, then grabbing this, and it will snap into these grid coordinates. So that's that set at 0, 0 for the side view. Great. Again, 4 meters high because we scaled everything at the same time. I'm going to press spacebar and then press spacebar in my top view. Same thing, I'll select the top view, and I'm going to set the pivot point by pressing D, and then I want to move that. I've actually already moved this earlier into the center of where the base is going to meet the ground in the top view. Okay, and you see 0, 0 for my grid is right here, so I want this to be centered on the grid for the top view. To do that, I press W so that I'm moving this. Make sure I only have this plane selected, and then I'm going to hold X to snap to grid, or I could toggle it on with this option here. And I'm going to grab that little center point and I'm going to move that so that my top view is centered on the center point of the grid. Detick my snap to grid there, and whenever I zoom back out, you're now going to see the front view centered at 0, 0 on the front, the side view centered at 0, 0 on the side view, and the top view centered on the top. Now there's one thing that's wrong with this that I can see in the perspective view. If I am modeling out the side this way, you see it's facing to the left here, down the Z axis. Well, my top view is actually facing along the X axis, so I need to rotate this. I need to rotate this that way so it's facing this way around. There's a couple of ways I can do that. I'm just going to pop into my top view. To rotate exactly 90 degrees, I can grab the outer pivot point whenever I use the E rotate tool. That's key E. And before I grab it, I can hold J, and it will allow me to snap in 15-degree increments. And you'll see that that is changing here on the y-axis. At the moment it's at 60. If I hold J, I can snap that right round to 90. Otherwise, what I could do is change that from 0 to 90, and that would directly translate that by 90. And now if I pop out of this view, I can see that it is facing downwards down the z-axis, which is the right direction for my side view. So now all of my references are lined up and I can begin modeling. What we're doing is creating something from this central point using these as reference. So you'll see if I create an object in the center, a cube or a cylinder would be fairly common to start from. If I create a cube here, you see if I press spacebar to go into my views, in my top view I can see that centered over the top. In the front view I can see that centered ready to start modeling from the front. In the side view I can see that cube centered ready from the side view. Now, one thing that will be very frustrating while you're modeling is you can accidentally select your model and your reference images at the same time. So to avoid doing that and selecting these reference images and accidentally moving them out of place, what we want to do is lock them in place the same way we would lock Photoshop layers. So these are out of the way. I'm happy with how far back they are on each plane. What I want to do now is select each one by clicking the first, holding shift, and then selecting the others. Yeah, there seems to be some strange little visual thing in Maya where it won't show you selecting more than one, but if you hold shift while you're selecting the others, you will in fact have all three selected. Okay, so hold shift to make those selections. Then on the right hand side here you have your modeling toolkit, your attribute editor, and your channel box / layer editor. So we're going to go down into the layers editor here, and I'm going to, with my references selected, go to layers and then create layer from selected, and this will create a layer with all of our references. I'm then going to name that, and I'll save that. Oh, I have to use an underscore, I think. No spaces. Then you see I can toggle the visibility off and on with the V. It's like the little eye icon in Photoshop. And on the right hand side here I can click this and until it turns to an R. So initially it'll turn to T for transparent, then R for reference. Then once I click away, I can no longer select these layers, so I won't accidentally select them while I'm modeling, which is really, really helpful for the rest of the project. If you ever want to come in and edit that, you can always just take that R off again and you will be able to select them. But for now, I'm going to create that as a reference image layer and leave that as is. The final part of using these reference images is choosing a primitive to start with, a primitive shape up here. You can choose it from your poly modeling shelf or go to create and then polygon primitives. Looking at my shape, I would be best starting with a cylinder. So I'm going to select that cube and delete it. Then I'm going to choose a polygon cylinder. So what I want to do is choose how many sides this polygon cylinder has, and I want to keep it fairly low poly for this project. That means lowering the amount of sides, the amount of edges, polygons, and vertices. To edit your initial starting shape, no matter which shape you choose, you go into your attribute editor, and you'll see these little tabs that say P cylinder 1, P cylinder shape 1, poly cylinder 1. And the option that we want is poly cylinder 1. And what it will allow us to do is change the subdivision axis here, which chooses how many subdivisions there are in the initial shape. So it started with 20, and I'm going to dial that right back down to 12. You can also change subdivisions for the height and for the top of the shape. I can add them in myself later on using the mesh tools and insert edge loop tool. So for now, I'm going to be setting those to 1. And that's looking like a good shape to start from. It's got enough sides so that it will look round without needing to worry about it being too high poly. Now, currently the sides of this don't look round, they look quite squared off, and that's just to do with the way the edge is rendering. So I can go into my edge mode, I can drag through to select all of the edges on the side. I want to keep these edges nice and hard on the top, so I'm just selecting my sides here, and I'm going to go up to Mesh Display, and then Soften Edge. Soften Edge and Harden Edge will change the way the edge renders. So you can see now, if I go into object mode, it looks like my edges are nice and smooth, while before, Mesh Display, Harden Edge, they looked hard, like you could tell that there were 12 sides to that object. So we can finally get around to actually modeling this thing. And to start, I'm going to start from the front view here. So I'm going to press spacebar in my front view. And I'm going to zoom into the bottom here. I'm going to change my midpoint by pressing D. And I'm going to snap it down. I'm going to hold V to snap this to a vertex. V. I'm going to grab the vertical part of my W tool, the vertical arrow, and I'm going to point it at this vertex here, so it's aligned with the bottom of my shape. And then I'm going to let go of my mouse. So now I have the center point set at the bottom of this object. Then I'm going to hold X, that's to snap it to the grid, as you see up here. I'm going to grab that again. Sorry, I have to use my W tool first. I had the D tool selected, the center tool. So with W pressed, then I can hold X, grab that, and snap it onto the bottom. So one thing to bear in mind whenever you're scaling things in a side view or a front view is if I press R and then I scale this in to be the width of my pillar, once I go into perspective view, you'll see that I have just scaled that in one direction, which means the circle on top of this has been stretched, it's been distorted into an oval. Now I could try and correct that myself this way. That is a very, very messy way to model. You're never going to get this perfectly circular again by guessing. The one thing I could do if I mess that up by accident is go into P cylinder 1, and you'll see the scale here on the X, Y, and Z axis, and I could change the axis to be the same as each other, and that will be perfectly circular again. But the handier way is to not make that mistake in the first place. So if I undo to this stage again, I'm going to scale this on 2 axes at once. I can do this in my top view here by using this little box in between the X and the Z axis, and that will scale it on both at the same time. You see it scaling perfectly and keeping circular there. So that would be a smart way of doing it from the top view. Otherwise, what I could do is, for this shape, I could scale it down on all axes using this little cube in the center here, and that would be fine because I'm going to be extruding that shape up anyway. So either one of those would work. I could do it from the front view or from the top view. Now I'll go into the top view and I'll just set that using this here. So that's about the size that I want that to be. Great, so we've got our starting size. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that this is in shaded display. It's shaded out grey, which means that we can't see our reference images through the object in front of us. That will become problematic, say, whenever I start pulling this up. It's going to start covering the reference image. If you want to see through your model, you press 4 for wireframe display. You press 5 on your keyboard for shaded display, and you can press 6 for shaded display with texture maps. Now I don't have any texture maps applied, so that won't make a difference to me. So 4 and 5 for modeling will be two image modes that you'll switch between. 4 to model against your reference, and then 5 to be able to see the results of the modeling and how the surface looks. So from there, with 4 selected, I'm going to scale this down a wee bit. Now, my reference isn't completely straight, but I don't want this to look perfect. I want these to be slightly off and kind of wonky. So I may do that after. Actually, I'll build this straight up to begin with. To do that, what I want to do is I want to select all the top faces here. So here's a handy wee tip. In our front view, I can select that. What that's done is, you see in your perspective view, it selected the top and the sides. All I want is the top here. So if I hold shift and select through the sides, then I'm left with the top selected. So again, that is select the top and the sides with a marquee tool dragged around it. So marquee tool dragged around. Hold shift and deselect the sides, and then you will be able to edit the top. Then I can use R, and I can use again this central cube to scale. Otherwise it will scale it on only the x-axis, and it will make it it'll ruin that perfect circle. So I want to use this little central tool, and from there I can go ahead and use my extrude tool, or press Control E to extrude that out. Then I can use the R tool to scale up. I'm going to use the W tool to move that up slightly. I can use again the extrude tool to extrude that edge, or those faces. I'll then use the W tool to move that up. Then I'm going to use the R scaling tool to move that out from the center on all axes, and I can start to build out the shape, working slowly up this shape. Now what would be a good idea for me, given the nature of this shape, would be to focus on the large geometric shapes first, and then add in edge loops for these details. So I can use the W tool to pull this up near the top here. Use the R tool to scale this in on all axes until I get something that looks like the kind of bevel that I want. And then from there I can go into mesh tools and insert edge loop. I'll just double click that tool to bring up my options, and I'm going to go relative distance from the edge and exit that tool. And here I can insert all of the edge loops that I need to start adding in the details that I want for this model. I can do things like that, then grab my faces, W tool just for the move tool selected. I'm going to select through these faces, shift and select through these faces, and you see I can scale those all up at the same time. And if I wanted to, I could jump into my perspective view now, and I could start to see how that's going to look whenever I do that. Okay, and I'm just going to start to model up the details, bearing in mind my references, and try and get that as accurate as possible. So at the moment I'm modeling straight up. I'll see from my side view that this is actually bent at one point. So you can either model it straight and then bend it afterwards, which is what I intend to do here, or you could, as you go, be grabbing your edges and moving them so that the object is more like the reference image as you go. It's up to you how you build that, but I would encourage you to try and make the large geometric shapes first and then add edge loops in later, rather than making constant extrusions as you go. Okay, so that is how you line up and check your modeling against reference images in Maya. Just one wee thing that I missed in Maya. Autosaves will work fine and they'll go into your autosave folder, but if I press Ctrl and S to save, you'll see it'll ask me for a place to save my project, or if I go to File and Save Scene, it'll bring that up as well. So what I want to do is go into my diorama project, or whatever your root project folder is, and then double click on Scenes, give your file a name. I'm just going to call it Fantasy Diorama Scene. Okay, so this is a scene saved within your project, so it's really important that the scenes are saved out. You can have all the options for it set on the right hand side here, and I'm just going to hit save, and that's the scene that I'm going to load whenever I want to bring this up again. You'll see if I open File Explorer that in scenes there is my Maya scene save there. So that's the file that you're going to be opening and closing and actually saving out to. And that's it.